Billy Abbott had finally found the evidence he needed, and that discovery was about to turn the Chancellor battle into something much more dangerous. For weeks, the question of who truly controlled Chancellor had been hanging over Genoa City. Billy had been digging through old records, following financial trails, and questioning the history surrounding the company. Now, the documents in the Chancellor archives appeared to give him a powerful advantage. According to Billy's interpretation of those records, the loan connected to the company had never been properly paid off. That meant the Abbott family could have a legitimate claim. Billy was not interested in waiting. He believed he had spent too much of his life watching other people make decisions for him. Chancellor represented more than another corporate victory. To Billy, taking control meant restoring something he believed belonged to his family. But there was one major problem. Cane Ashby and Lily Winters were not prepared to surrender. Lily knew exactly what Billy was capable of when he became obsessed with something. She had seen the emotional side of Billy, but she had also seen the businessman who could become reckless when anger and pride took control. And now, with Billy convinced that he had the law and the evidence on his side, Lily realized that simply asking him to stop would not be enough. She needed help. Jack Abbott was the first person who came to mind. Lily reached out because she believed Jack might be able to get through to Billy in a way that nobody else could. After all, Billy was Jack's brother. If anyone understood the pressure building inside Billy, it should have been Jack. But Lily may have been expecting too much. Jack had already heard about Billy's discoveries, and he knew his brother was determined to move forward. Jack could offer advice, but stopping Billy was another matter entirely. Meanwhile, Cane understood that the Abbott family was only part of the problem. If Billy took control of Chancellor, Cane's position could disappear almost overnight. That was when another name entered the conversation. Victor Newman. As dangerous as the idea sounded, Cane knew Victor had his own reasons for wanting Billy weakened. Victor had never been comfortable watching Billy gain power, especially when Billy's actions could threaten the Newman interests or disrupt the balance of power in Genoa City. Cane therefore faced a difficult choice. Should he ask Victor Newman for help, knowing that Victor never gives anything away for free? Before Cane could make that decision, Victor was already preparing his own move. Victor did not need to physically take Chancellor away from Billy. He only needed to destroy Billy's credibility. And that could be much easier. Victor began looking closely at the documents Billy had discovered. If Billy's entire takeover depended on proving that a debt remained unpaid, then Victor's strategy was obvious. Make people believe the debt had already been settled. If Victor could produce documentation suggesting the loan had been paid in full, Billy's evidence could suddenly become questionable. And once doubt entered the picture, Billy's entire argument could begin collapsing. But Victor was not simply planning a legal counterattack. He wanted Billy embarrassed. He wanted the Abbott family questioning Billy's judgment. And most importantly, he wanted Billy angry enough to make a mistake. That was exactly what worried Sally Spectra. Sally had been watching Billy become increasingly consumed by the Chancellor fight. She knew the man she loved could be passionate, stubborn, and determined. But there was a dangerous difference between determination and obsession. Sally was pregnant. She and Billy had been talking about their future, their wedding, and the family they were building together. She wanted Billy to focus on that future. Instead, every conversation seemed to return to Chancellor. Sally finally confronted him. "Billy, how far are you willing to go?" Billy looked at her, frustrated. "As far as I have to. That's exactly what scares me." Billy insisted that this was not about revenge. He claimed it was about doing what was right for his family. But Sally could hear something else in his voice. Anger. And Victor Newman knew anger could be turned into a weapon. While the corporate war continued to build, another emotional battle was unfolding across Genoa City. Sharon Newman was still dealing with the consequences of everything Matt Clark had done. Matt wanted a second chance. He wanted Sharon to believe that the man standing in front of her now was different from the person who had caused so much pain in her life. But Sharon had no reason to forget. Her son Noah was gone. Nick was struggling through rehabilitation. And Matt's actions had contributed to a chain of events that had affected nearly everyone Sharon loved. So when Matt approached Sharon at Crimson Lights, he was walking directly into a storm he could not control. He wanted forgiveness. Sharon was not sure she could give it. And as Matt prepared to say the words he had been carrying for so long, Sharon realized that this conversation could reopen wounds she had spent years trying to bury. At the same time, she had another reason to be worried. Nick. Sharon needed answers about his recovery. She wanted to know whether rehabilitation was actually helping him, whether he was staying committed, and whether there was any hope that the man she knew could finally break free from the destructive path he had been following. But Sharon was about to discover that getting answers about Nick might also force her to confront the past. And Matt Clark was standing right in the middle of it. The Chancellor War was escalating. Victor was preparing his counterattack. Billy was becoming more reckless. Lily was asking Jack for help. Cane was considering an alliance with Victor. Sally was becoming frightened by Billy's behavior. And Sharon was about to decide whether Matt deserved forgiveness. None of them realized yet that these separate conflicts were moving toward the same dangerous point. Because in Genoa City, one person's secret rarely stays separate for long. And Victor Newman was already preparing to make his next move. Victor Newman knew that the most effective way to defeat Billy Abbott was not necessarily to attack him directly. Billy was expecting a fight. He was expecting objections, lawsuits, angry phone calls, and resistance from Cane and Lily. What he might not be expecting was for someone to make his own evidence look unreliable. That was exactly where Victor intended to strike. The documents Billy had found in the Chancellor archives had given him confidence. But Victor understood something Billy was overlooking. Evidence only had power when people believed it was authentic and complete. If Victor could introduce another set of records showing that the disputed loan had already been paid, Billy's argument could suddenly become much harder to defend. And Victor was prepared to make that happen. He discussed the situation with Nick Newman, explaining that Billy was becoming increasingly aggressive. Nick knew Billy well enough to understand that he would not simply walk away. "He thinks this is his chance," Nick said. Victor shook his head. "He thinks it is a victory." "That's different." Nick immediately recognized the danger. Victor had a long history of fighting his enemies through strategy, pressure, and manipulation. But this time, the target was family. Billy was Jack's brother. He was also Sally's fiancé and the father of her unborn child. Nick wondered whether Victor was taking things too far. Victor insisted that Billy had brought the conflict upon himself. But Nick could see something in Victor's expression that worried her. He wasn't simply trying to protect his interests. He wanted to win. Across town, Cane Ashby was facing the reality that his position at Chancellor could disappear if Billy's plan succeeded. Lily was equally determined to fight back. She had already reached out to Jack, hoping he could convince Billy to reconsider. But Jack's response left her frustrated. "I can talk to him," Jack told her. "I can't promise he'll listen." "That isn't good enough," Lily replied. Jack understood her desperation. He also understood Billy. When Billy believed he had discovered an injustice, telling him to stop usually made him push harder. Meanwhile, Cane was considering a much riskier option. Victor Newman. Cane knew that asking Victor for help was dangerous. Victor would expect something in return, even if he did not immediately say what that something was. Still, Cane had to think about survival. If Billy took Chancellor, there might be no second chance. So Cane arranged a conversation with Victor. Victor listened carefully as Cane explained the situation. "You want me to stop Billy," Victor said. "I want someone who can make him think twice." Victor almost smiled. "Billy Abbott doesn't think twice. That's part of his problem." Cane knew he had walked into exactly the kind of conversation Victor preferred. Victor offered no promises. But he also did not say no. That was enough to give Cane hope. Unfortunately for Billy, the pressure was about to come from another direction. Sally Spectra was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the way Billy was handling everything. She had watched him work through the Chancellor records. She had listened as he talked about justice and the Abbott legacy. But she could tell that something deeper was driving him. Billy wasn't only fighting for Chancellor anymore. He was fighting against everyone who had ever made him feel powerless. Sally tried to bring him back to reality. Their wedding was approaching. Their baby was coming. They had a future to build. But Billy's attention remained fixed on the company. "You promised me this wouldn't consume you," Sally reminded him. Billy looked away. "I never said I would stop fighting." "I know. That's what I'm afraid of." Billy didn't have an answer. For the first time, he realized Sally wasn't asking him to surrender. She was asking him to remember who he was fighting for. But before Billy could respond, a new development reached him. Someone was questioning the authenticity of the Chancellor evidence. Billy immediately knew what that meant. Victor! His anger exploded. Billy had expected resistance, but he had not expected someone to challenge the documents so quickly. He began investigating. And the more he searched, the more suspicious he became. Someone had altered the story. Someone wanted the world to believe that the debt had already been paid. Billy was convinced that Victor was behind it. And if Victor thought Billy would simply accept the challenge, he was wrong. Billy was ready to fight back. At the same time, Sharon's situation was becoming even more emotional. Matt Clark stood across from her at Crimson Lights, struggling to find the right words. He had rehearsed the apology in his mind. But now that Sharon was standing in front of him, every sentence sounded inadequate. "You don't have to forgive me," Matt finally said. Sharon stared at him. "Then why are you asking?" Matt hesitated. "Because I need to know if there's any chance." Sharon's expression hardened. "A chance for what?" "A chance to be something other than the person who hurt you." Sharon remembered everything. The fear. The manipulation. The pain. And now Nick's struggle. She could not simply erase those memories because Matt had suddenly developed a conscience. "You don't get to decide when I'm ready to forgive you," Sharon said. Matt lowered his eyes. "I know. No, I don't think you do." The words hit him harder than he expected. Sharon explained that his actions still had consequences. Noah was gone. Nick was in rehab. And the people Sharon loved were still paying the price. Matt tried to defend himself, but Sharon refused to let him turn the conversation into an excuse. For the first time, Matt understood that forgiveness was not something he could demand. He could ask. But Sharon could say no. And she was very close to doing exactly that. Later, Sharon contacted Nick's rehabilitation center. She needed an update. She needed to hear that Nick was making progress. The report she received gave her some hope, but not enough to make her relax. Nick was still struggling. Recovery was not going to happen overnight. Victor was also thinking about Nick. He spoke privately with Nikki about the best way to support their son without pushing him too hard. Victor's instinct was to protect Nick aggressively. Nikki reminded him that Nick needed support, not another battle. That conversation forced Victor to confront something he often avoided. Sometimes the hardest thing was not defeating an enemy. Sometimes it was standing beside someone you loved while they fought their own battle. But Victor's attention soon returned to Billy. Because if Billy refused to back down, Victor was prepared to escalate. And Billy was already preparing his own response. Neither man realized that the Chancellor conflict was becoming personal enough to affect everyone around them. Jack was caught between his family and the consequences of Billy's actions. Lily was desperate to protect Chancellor. Kane was considering an alliance with Victor. Sally was afraid Billy would lose himself. And Sharon was being forced to decide whether Matt's apology meant anything. Then, just as the tension reached another level, Genoa City received a much happier surprise. Nina Webster was coming home. Her return was about to bring Traci Abbott and Christine Blair Romalotti together with someone they had deeply missed. And Danny Romalotti had another surprise waiting. A new song. For a brief moment, music, friendship, and memories would bring some warmth back to Genoa City. But the peace would not last. Because while everyone was celebrating Nina's return, Victor was moving closer to his attack. And Billy was about to discover just how far Victor Newman was willing to go to destroy his credibility. The return of Nina Webster brought a rare moment of warmth to Genoa City, but the peace surrounding her homecoming could not last for long. Behind the smiles and familiar conversations, the biggest conflicts were still growing. Traci Abbott and Christine Blair Romalotti were thrilled to see Nina again. For Traci, moments like this were a reminder that Genoa City was more than corporate battles and family rivalries. It was a place filled with history, friendships, heartbreak, and people who somehow always found their way back to one another. Danny Romalotti added to the celebration with his new song. Christine listened with a smile as Danny performed, and for a moment, the pressure surrounding their lives seemed to disappear. But while Danny's music brought people together, another kind of performance was happening behind closed doors. Victor Newman was preparing to challenge Billy Abbott. The information surrounding the Chancellor loan was becoming increasingly complicated. Billy believed the original records proved his case. Victor wanted everyone to believe the opposite. And Victor knew exactly what Billy's greatest weakness was. Billy wanted to prove he was right. If Victor could make Billy emotional enough, Billy might destroy his own credibility. That was the trap. Victor began spreading doubts about the Chancellor documents. Questions appeared about the loan, the payment history, and the authenticity of the records Billy had uncovered. Billy was furious. He demanded answers. He wanted to know who had challenged the documents and why. The response was exactly what he expected. Victor Newman. Billy's anger turned into determination. He confronted Victor, expecting a battle of words. "You think you can rewrite history?" Billy demanded. Victor remained calm. "I don't have to rewrite anything." Billy stepped closer. "You're trying to make me look like a liar." Victor looked directly at him. "If your evidence is real, you shouldn't have anything to worry about." That sentence pushed Billy over the edge. Because Billy understood what Victor was really saying. Prove it. And Billy was determined to do exactly that. Unfortunately, Sally was watching the situation become more dangerous. She knew Billy. She knew how quickly anger could turn into obsession. She also knew that Victor had years of experience manipulating people into making mistakes. Sally tried once again to reach him. She reminded Billy about their wedding. She reminded him about the baby. She reminded him that their future was waiting for them. Billy promised her that he could handle it. But Sally was not convinced. She could see the Chancellor had become more than a business dispute. It had become a personal war. Meanwhile, Lily Winters was running out of options. She had contacted Jack Abbott because she hoped Billy's brother could talk sense into him. Jack tried. But Lily quickly realized that Billy was no longer listening to anyone. "He thinks everyone is against him," Jack admitted. "Because everyone keeps fighting him," Lily replied. Jack understood the frustration. But he also knew Billy's personality. Once Billy believed he was protecting his family, stopping him was almost impossible. Cane Ashby was reaching the same conclusion. That was why Victor's potential involvement suddenly became more important. Cane knew Victor could be ruthless, but he also knew Victor had the resources to challenge Billy's takeover. Still, Cane had to be careful. Working with Victor could save Chancellor today and create a bigger problem tomorrow. Before Cane could make his next move, Lily received troubling information. Billy was preparing to push even harder. Lily immediately realized that waiting was no longer an option. She needed to protect Chancellor before Billy could complete his takeover. That meant the Abbott family would have to become involved. And that could turn the corporate dispute into a full family war. While the Chancellor battle intensified, Sharon Newman was dealing with a completely different kind of confrontation. Matt Clark had asked her for forgiveness. Sharon had refused to give him the answer he wanted. But Matt wasn't prepared to walk away quietly. He understood that Sharon had every reason to hate him. Still, he hoped that showing remorse might eventually change her mind. Sharon was not interested in promises. She wanted Matt to understand what his actions had done. Nick was still struggling. His rehabilitation was fragile. Every day brought new challenges. And Sharon could not ignore the connection between Nick's current problems and the chaos Matt had helped create. When Sharon checked on Nick's progress, she learned that recovery was continuing, but it would take patience. That news gave her hope. But it also made her angry. Nick needed peace. He needed stability. Instead, Matt was back in Genoa City asking for forgiveness. Sharon began wondering whether Matt's apology was really about her or whether it was about making himself feel better. That question stayed with her. And Matt could sense that Sharon still had not forgiven him. At the same time, Newman and Chelsea Lawson were facing their own problems at Newman Media. Their working relationship had always been complicated by their personal history. They could cooperate brilliantly when they shared the same goal. But when they disagreed, old emotions quickly resurfaced. Now they had to deal with the Chancellor story. Victor's potential claims about Billy's evidence created a major editorial problem. Should Newman Media report the allegations? Should they challenge Billy's version? Or should they protect their own interests by following Victor's preferred narrative? Chelsea wasn't comfortable publishing something simply because Victor wanted it. Adam understood the risks. "If we go after Billy, we need proof," Chelsea told him. Adam agreed. "But if Victor has proof, we can't ignore it." Chelsea looked at him carefully. "And if Victor doesn't?" That question created another problem. Adam and Chelsea were supposed to be working together. Instead, they were once again arguing over trust, ethics, and business. Their disagreement was not simply about one article. It was about whether they could still function as partners when powerful people were pushing them in different directions. Elsewhere, Stephanie Simmons was working on something far more hopeful. She contacted a friend who was an orthopedic surgeon and began arranging a consultation for Nate Hastings. Nate's hand procedure could determine whether he would ever return to the operating room. For Nate, surgery was not simply a profession. It was part of his identity. He wanted his career back. He wanted to prove that his injury did not define him. Stephanie was determined to help him find that opportunity. But while Nate's future began to look brighter, Billy's future was becoming darker. Victor had made his move. Billy was angry. Sally was frightened. Lily was calling for help. Kane was considering Victor's offer. And Jack was being pulled deeper into a conflict he never wanted. Then another connection began quietly developing. Victoria Newman and Kyle Abbott were spending more time together. At first, their relationship could be explained as friendship. They understood each other's pressures. They both knew what it meant to live under powerful family names. They both understood the expectations attached to being a Newman or an Abbott. But something was changing. Their conversations lasted longer. Their eye contact felt different. And every time they found themselves alone, the tension became harder to ignore. Kyle was already trying to manage the damage the Chancellor battle could cause Jabot. Victoria was dealing with her own complicated family dynamics. Yet when they were together, corporate politics seemed to disappear for a moment. Neither wanted to admit what was happening. But the possibility of something more was becoming impossible to ignore. And that was exactly what made their connection dangerous. Because Genoa City was already filled with unstable alliances. Billy and Victor were heading toward war. Kane and Lily were fighting to protect Chancellor. Sally was trying to save her relationship with Billy. Sharon was refusing to forgive Matt. Adam and Chelsea were struggling to work together. And now Kyle and Victoria were approaching a line neither one seemed ready to cross. The next move could change everything. And Billy was about to make his. Billy Abbott had reached the point where backing down no longer felt possible. The Chancellor battle had consumed nearly every part of his life. What began as an investigation into old financial records had become a personal fight over family, loyalty, and control. Now Victor Newman was challenging the evidence Billy believed would finally give the Abbott family the advantage. Billy knew Victor was dangerous. But he also knew that surrendering Chancellor would haunt him. So instead of stepping away, Billy decided to push harder. He began examining every document connected to the disputed loan. If Victor had produced evidence claiming the debt had been paid, Billy wanted to know where it came from and who had authorized it. The deeper Billy went, the more convinced he became that something was wrong. And that suspicion only fueled his anger. Sally watched him from the sidelines. She wanted to believe that Billy could win this fight without destroying himself in the process. But she was beginning to understand that winning might not be enough. Billy wanted Victor to lose. He wanted Cane and Lily out. He wanted everyone who had doubted him to admit that he was right. And that made Sally wonder whether the man she loved was slowly becoming someone she barely recognized. She confronted him again. "Billy, what happens after you win?" Billy looked at her. "I take back what belongs to my family." "And then?" He had no immediate answer. Sally continued. "We have a wedding. We have a baby coming. We have a life." Billy finally softened. "I know." "Then don't lose that life trying to prove something to everyone else." Her words stayed with him. For a moment, Billy seemed to understand. But the Chancellor fight was already moving too quickly. Cane and Lily were not willing to surrender. Lily continued seeking help from Jack, hoping that Jack could somehow convince Billy to stop before the situation became irreversible. Jack knew the family was approaching a breaking point. He loved Billy. He also understood why Billy believed he was fighting for the Abbott legacy. But Jack could not ignore the damage this conflict was causing. Cane, meanwhile, was still considering Victor's involvement. He knew that Victor's help could change the balance of power overnight. But Cane also understood the price. Victor never entered a battle without having a second objective. If Cane accepted Victor's assistance, Chancellor might survive Billy's takeover attempt, but Victor could gain influence over the company afterward. It was a dangerous bargain. Still, Cane had to consider it. Because Billy was not slowing down. And Victor was not backing away. As the corporate conflict intensified, another story was reaching a critical point. Sharon Newman had made her feelings about Matt Clark clear. She could not simply forgive him because he had apologized. Matt had asked for forgiveness because he wanted a fresh beginning. Sharon was thinking about something else. She was thinking about Nick. She was thinking about Noah. She was thinking about every person whose life had been damaged by Matt's choices. When Sharon checked on Nick's rehabilitation progress, she received another reminder that recovery would take time. Nick was fighting his way back. He was not finished. But he was vulnerable. And Sharon knew that the last thing he needed was more chaos. Matt's return had reopened too many wounds. So when Matt hoped Sharon might eventually change her mind, she remained firm. Forgiveness might be possible someday. But not now. Not while the consequences of his actions were still unfolding. Matt had wanted Sharon to give him peace. Instead, she gave him the truth. He would have to live with what he had done. That conversation could become one of the biggest turning points in Matt's attempt to rebuild his life. Meanwhile, Victor was still thinking about Nick. His conversation with Nikki reminded him that their son needed support more than pressure. Victor wanted to control the situation. Nikki wanted him to understand that Nick had to make his own recovery decisions. Their discussion showed a softer side of Victor. For all his ruthless business tactics, Nick was still his son. And watching Nick struggle forced Victor to confront something money and power could not solve. He could not simply defeat addiction for Nick. He could only stand beside him. At Newman Media, Adam and Chelsea were also facing a difficult decision. The Chancellor conflict was becoming impossible to ignore. If Victor wanted the company to publish damaging claims about Billy, Adam had to decide how far he was willing to go. Chelsea challenged him. She did not want Newman Media becoming another weapon in Victor's war. Adam argued that they needed to protect the company's interests. Their disagreement became heated. But underneath the argument was something more personal. Both Adam and Chelsea knew they were capable of turning business disagreements into emotional battles. They had done it before. And now, with so much at stake, neither wanted to be the first to compromise. Still, they eventually realized that the bigger danger was allowing Victor or Billy to dictate their decisions. They needed facts. Not rumors. Not manufactured evidence. Not revenge. Facts. That decision could eventually put them directly against Victor. Elsewhere, Nate Hastings was beginning to see a possible future beyond his injury. Stephanie Simmons had arranged a consultation with an orthopedic surgeon. For Nate, the appointment represented hope. If the procedure worked, he could potentially return to the operating room. The thought of performing surgery again gave him something he desperately needed. A reason to believe his career was not over. And while Nate looked toward a new beginning, Genoa City was watching another relationship begin to change. Victoria Newman and Kyle Abbott could no longer ignore the chemistry between them. They had become closer through shared experiences, family pressure, and complicated circumstances. Their friendship had started innocently. Now every conversation seemed to carry another layer. Kyle knew that getting involved with Victoria could create enormous problems. She was a Newman. He was an Abbott. Their families were constantly connected through business, rivalry, and history. One wrong move could turn a private attraction into a public disaster. Yet neither seemed able to walk away. When they found themselves alone, the silence between them said more than either wanted to admit. Kyle looked at Victoria. Victoria looked back. For a moment, it seemed like they might finally cross the line. But they stopped. Not because the attraction wasn't real. Because they knew what could happen afterward. The temptation remained. And that made their next meeting even more dangerous. At the same time, Billy's situation was reaching a breaking point. Victor's challenge had not destroyed him. It had made him more determined. Billy was ready to expose whatever he believed Victor had done. But Victor was counting on Billy's anger. He wanted Billy to react emotionally. He wanted him to make one mistake. And if Billy did, the entire Chancellor takeover could collapse. Sally sensed the danger. Lily sensed it. Kane sensed it. Even Jack understood that Billy was approaching a moment where one decision could change everything. The question was no longer whether Billy would fight. He absolutely would. The question was whether he could fight without losing the people he loved. Because Sally had made her choice clear. She wanted Billy. She wanted their baby. She wanted their wedding. She wanted a future. But she did not want to spend that future watching Billy destroy himself over Chancellor. And Victor knew exactly how to exploit that weakness. As the week moved toward its final days, Genoa City remained divided. Billy wanted control. Kane and Lily wanted to protect Chancellor. Victor wanted Billy discredited. Sally wanted her fiancé back. Sharon wanted justice for the pain Matt had caused. Nick was fighting for recovery. Adam and Chelsea were trying to keep Newman Media from becoming another weapon. Nate was fighting for his career. Nina's return had brought old friends together. Danny's music had created a moment of happiness. And Kyle and Victoria were standing dangerously close to a romantic line neither one could safely cross. Every storyline was moving forward. But the Chancellor conflict remained at the center of the storm. Billy believed the truth would save him. Victor believed power would. And Lily and Kane were running out of time. If Victor's plan succeeded, Billy could lose everything. If Billy exposed Victor, the consequences could be even bigger. And if Billy finally snapped, Sally might be forced to make a decision she never expected to face. The next chapter would not simply decide who controlled Chancellor. It could decide which relationships survived the battle. Because in Genoa City, corporate wars never stay inside the boardroom. They follow people home. They destroy trust. They expose hidden loyalties. And sometimes, they create the kind of heartbreak that no victory can repair.